Welcome to A Funny Thing Called Business. We are 4 business owners with over 30 years collective experience under our belts, sharing the capers and triumphs of running a small business and how we now avoid perilous customer chaos and pitfalls. I'm Claire Worley. We also have
Darren Langley,
Kate Curry,
Pete Morgan.
Fabulous guys. So today is a very exciting day because it's the 4th in our final of the series Ask Me Anything, and we are asking our podcast producer Pete Morgan in Ask Me Anything. So are you fully braced, Pete?
No.
That's the way we like it.
Exactly. Quite nervous. It's
Good,
strange
good.
because all of you were, I'm quite nervous. And I remember thinking, what? Is he asking questions?
Yeah.
What's the thing to be nervous about? But it's quite nerve-wracking.
Yeah, and this is why it's always good to have the tables turned on you, just so you can kind of
Yeah.
fully experience what it's like for people on the other side. Anywho, so we have got questions from outside as well today. But Kate, why don't you start us off with what question have you got for Pete?
I'm going to dive straight in there with something a little bit like quirky and out there. So, I know, well, we all know that you've got a long career in radio as well as with podcasts, and through both of those sort of sides of your life, you must have met some really fascinating people. Of all those people, if you could swap for the day with one of those people, who would it be and why?
Oh my goodness. I think it would probably be... I'll keep it relatively recent, and it's not necessarily a famous person. It's a guy called Steve Guest who had a podcast called The Guest List. And what I really like about Steve is he decides he's doing something and then just does it. He's got this really good drive about him. So he decided to take up golf, and he decided that in 12 months he'd get his handicap down to single figures. Now, this is something that people strive all of their life to do. And he did it. He somehow worked out, playing golf once a week in the midst of being a dad, being a husband, being a business owner, being an influencer. He just kind of did that. And he did the same with learning another language, have a New York Times best-selling book, all of those kind of things. His drive was admirable. And I'm a bit like, go on, I could have that. If he could have played the guitar as well, I'd have been over the moon. Because that's I think my thing of I'd love to play the guitar. But I've just got big fat sausage fingers. So I just stick to
That's
the drums.
no excuse.
No, you're right.
I would
Drums are
just
easier.
love to just not have sausage fingers for the day.
Oh, yeah.
Would be amazing.
Yeah, I'll swap with someone with not sausage fingers.
I'd do that as well.
Yeah, fine.
Oh, that's really interesting. I love those people because so many people say they're going to do something and they've got all these things but never do it.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to know what actually goes through his head, like when he wakes up in the morning.
Yeah.
We've had a few conversations, and we've played golf together, and we got to know each other quite a bit. And I think his mind is running at 1,000 miles a minute all the time. And what his wife's very good at is kind of just going, all right, slow down
Steve.
now. Just calm it. So that's what it is. He's just constantly going, thoughts, thinking this, doing, writing that, so golf, back, this, that, and it's just like...
That sounds like it'd be a really tiring day.
Oh, what?
Yeah,
that's why I've not
Can
done
I
it.
be Pete again now? I'm good.
Exactly.
I've learned a language.
Yeah, learn a language and I've played golf. I'm good, thanks. See you later.
Give me back my sausage fingers.
Yeah. I guess people do open up to you a bit more. Would you say that you get a bit more of an insight into people through what you do?
At certain times, more so kind of when I was working in radio, you would, but with what I'm doing now with the podcasting, because it's always linked to the business. You find out more about people's businesses, I think, than anything else. But when I was working in radio and you were interviewing, 4 or 5 people a day, and in the main they were coming in to see you, there's that moment when they forget they've got a microphone in front of them, and they forget that they're being heard by, thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, depending on which station I was on at any given time. So, I think with the broadcasting you do get to know them a bit better. It's great. It's the almost embarrassing thing is that you will meet them years later, and they'll go, "Oh, do you not remember me?"
Oh yeah.
And you have to kind of say, I'm really sorry, but I spoke to 5 people a day. And some people do still stick out in my mind, but
who's the strangest of those that sticks out in your mind?
The strangest was probably a guy who was a parish councillor, who it also turns out was a tribal chief from Ghana. I mean, he was a small white man with silver hair, and he ran a lumber mill in Ghana, and all the people that worked in the lumber mill were local tribesmen. So when he left, he did it for 8 years, and when he left, they made him a tribal leader. And he really was, it's like, you're not a tribal leader, And he showed me a photo that was taken, and he's got the ceremonial headdress on, because he was saying they offered him a wife. And he was like, I've got one.
Well, you saw it. You can have another
Well, that's
one.
what they were saying. Well, you can have more than one. And he was like, that's not the way it works. I'm really sorry. I'll take the glory, but I don't want the polygamy to go with it.
No.
So he's someone that he's the guy that I use as an example of everyone's got a story.
Yes.
Because that was incredible. What a great evening that was I spent with him.
So who would be on the top of your list to encourage to do a podcast? Produced by you, obviously.
Obviously. I think it is just people who you meet them and they are good communicators. They can string a sentence together, they've got something about them, they're engaging, they're charming, and it's like, just put them in front of a microphone. Yeah. And you are going to get great content. I met at a chamber event a funeral director, and I was like, you absolutely should do a podcast. That's the thing. Didn't say it to him. Just, I was thinking, you absolutely should be doing a podcast.
Is that Ian Hazel?
It is.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and indeed. So that's the kind of, just someone who's engaging and charming, because it's such an intimate thing, podcasting. It's such a one-on-one. The people who are listening to this now, they're not sat in a group together. They're on their own. They're either commuting, or they're walking the dog, or they're out for a walk, or they're just getting ready in the morning, or getting ready for bed at night. It's them on their own listening to us. So that connection, that one-to-one, is incredibly strong. It's anyone that can do that, who believes themselves to be a good communicator, they should be making a podcast.
What do you say to people who say they can make a podcast themselves? They've got a copy of Audacity, they've got a microphone stuck on the side of their computer.
They absolutely can. You can make a podcast with using your phone. There's an app called Anchor FM. You can download it and you can make it. You can sort it all out within the app. But
it's just still downloading at the moment.
Yeah, that's fine. Because the caveat is, it sounds like you've made a podcast on your phone.
Yeah.
That's the problem. That's what I'm bringing. And it's similar to you. Absolutely, somebody can make a website using one of those kind of shop bought websites you can go to. Someone could do their own business coaching by buying a couple of books. Mm-hmm. Someone can do some design by getting the C word. But they can't do it well, they can't do it to make it professionally sounding. No. You know, the people that you look at the top of the charts and they've got a production house behind them making it sound as good as they possibly can. So if someone believes they can do it, then I'm happy to let them try. But invariably what I've found is that if they really want to show off them, their expertise, their business, their brand in the best way, don't do it with, doing your own podcast using an app on your phone.
Yeah, sound advice.
Absolutely.
So, what are the main skills you brought from your presenting on radio to podcasting, do you think?
So I was both at different times. I was a presenter and a producer, and being a producer helped me be a presenter because it gives you insight as to what the producer's going through, so that you don't get too much of a diva presenter.
Yeah.
And like, oh, why can't you make the world spin in the opposite direction? Mm-hmm. Well, just because I can't, so deal with it. And from that, I took it. A lot of it is that creating that bond and that link with the audience, using a microphone properly, planning your show. I talk about podcasts like as though they're shows, and I call them, yeah, it's all right, I'll sort the show out.
Yeah.
So I, that it's those kind of things. It's the simplest way to put it is it's the ear that I've brought, so I can hear something and think, yeah, it doesn't sound right. Mm-hmm. And it's not always sound quality, although sound quality is a big bugbear of mine. It's more, that doesn't flow right, or that doesn't, the language you're using isn't quite right. Mm-hmm. So on radio, we were always taught, this goes back to what I was saying about it being intimate. On radio, we were always taught you talk to one person and one mm-hmm. person only. So you never say you all, you just kind of say you. How are you doing this morning? Because if you say, how are you all doing this morning? There's people who are listening who are on their own, and they're like, well,
I've not got anyone.
I'm not being identified here.
Yeah. Is that how you think when you're doing this podcast? You think of one person? Because I only think of us in the room. I don't think of anyone else.
You mean there's other people listening?
Apparently there are, yeah.
I always think, and it's only because, and this might kind of freak her out now, but I always think of Jenny.
Do you know, I think that's the only person that comes to mind.
Because she's been very vocal and said that she listens to every episode. Mm-hmm. So, hi Jenny.
Yeah, hi Jenny.
Shout out.
So that's who I... But it's good to... When I worked for the BBC, just before I joined, they'd done this big thing and they came up with Dave and Sue. So they were the listener you're speaking to.
Okay.
Was Dave and Sue. But they got two actors.
Yeah.
To have their photo taken, so there was a photo in the studio
good.
That's Dave and Sue. So that's who you're speaking to, because I spent a lot of my career sat on my own in a soundproof room, so you would look to them, and you would talk to them when you're talking out loud.
Morning, Dave.
Yeah.
Morning, Sue.
Morning, Dave. Morning, Sue. Yeah, I think they were called like Barry and Deirdre. And I think they were actually a couple as well, which it was really weird. It was like, well, why don't we call them Barry and Deirdre? I don't understand.
If they start talking back to you, do you realise then you've spent too long in the same room?
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, that's so good though, isn't it? Because that's what we talk a lot on this podcast about, our own marketing, talking to one person. Mm-hmm. So if you're doing a podcast, why wouldn't you be doing the same? Because
absolutely.
You're having that conversation.
Yeah. When you're putting a podcast together, you think in the way that you do when you're starting your business. You think of who's the target, what is it they're going to be getting from this? How am I going to communicate that? Is there a call to action? Where do I put it? And there's a lot of parallels between the two.
This episode is sponsored by Lexicon, a copywriting agency that will make your marketing ooze with personality. Ready to ditch the corporate BS and stand out from your competitors? Lexicon will craft words that make your personality pop off the page. Grab your ideal customer by the eyeballs and persuade them to do business. Book a free amp-up session for clarity on how to make your marketing work harder. Visit lexicon.co.uk or follow Anita Ellis on LinkedIn. So I'm going to share a question now from Katie Hale from Hailstorm Marketing. She sent in, which I just thought this is classic Katie, her question. Have you ever refused to do a podcast for a client because you knew it sounded rubbish?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It was a client who was recording in... They'd driven like 100 miles to interview a guest, and they'd taken a handheld recorder with them. And what they decided to do is... they'd gone to... It was a seaside town they'd gone to. And they interviewed them on the seafront. And it was quite a serious interview. It wasn't anything frivolous. It was, quite a serious interview within this industry that, this podcast was in. I don't want to give details. If they're hearing it, they're going to know.
Okay.
I
think they know already, don't they?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And basically, the way they were stood interviewing the guest sounded great, but when they were speaking, so what they would do is they would have the handheld recorder, ask the question, and then move it like a microphone over to their guest.
Yeah.
The guest sounded great, but when they came to ask a question and reflect on the answer that they'd given, it sounded like they were in a wind tunnel.
Yeah.
So it was just all over, and you could just kind of...
Yeah.
in the background, and it was like, right, this sounds rubbish. You can't put this out. I don't want to put the company name to this.
Yeah.
And in the end, they had to basically painstakingly go through and re-record all of their bits.
Okay.
So it still didn't sound great because it sounded kind of the atmosphere, the atmos on the microphones were completely different. And if that happens, what I always say is just put a caveat at the beginning. If you can't rearrange with the guests, which they couldn't, put a thing at the beginning, say, hi guys, this is what happened, but this is an important interview that I think you need to hear.
Yeah.
Couldn't you have rebadged it as the Wind Tunnel series?
You could have done.
And then you could have done all of them the same.
Why didn't we do that?
Consistency. Yeah.
Listen to me as I question people in a wind tunnel.
Exactly.
And just turn it into an advantage. A bit like, how Cocoa Pops make the milk chocolatey. And they were like,
Yeah.
oh no, that's rubbish. Hold on a minute.
They're so chocolatey, they turn the milk brown. Yeah.
Well, I don't think they say turn the milk brown. They say they turn the milk chocolatey. That's it.
It can't be they're so chocolatey they turn the milk chocolatey.
I don't think they say they're so chocolatey.
They're so brown.
They're so brown they turn the milk chocolatey.
No, they just say Cocoa Pops. They're so yummy they turn the milk chocolatey. Or something like that.
I think
they're
do
awful.
I think they do turn the milk brown. I think that's what they
Well,
say.
and that's why you don't work in marketing for Kellogg's. We're going to have to close Cocoa Pops. Why? Claire said we should do turn the milk brown. And apparently nobody wants to buy brown milk.
I am going to have to look that up because that's what I sing still at 47. So anyway, Darren.
Oh, dear. Yes. I have no
further questions.
the defence rests. No, I've got. One of the things with the podcast is to be consistent and have frequent episodes, but I guess one of the challenges that we find as well when we're coming up with next episodes is what topics do we do? Where do we pull those topics from? Do you have any thoughts, suggestions on how people can kind of plan out their topics for a series of podcasts?
I always say when you're first starting, you try and get at least 6 months worth of content down. So you've got that. And then as you're working through, think about episode 7. So as you've done one, think about... So you've always got those 6 episodes ahead. And the other thing to kind of bear in mind is, with anything like this, you know, what we're doing is helping business owners be better business owners, and the 4 of us bring our, you know, different levels of expertise to the table.
Are you doing expertise in quotes?
Yeah, absolutely, expertise in inverted commas there. But we've done like an episode on marketing. We've done an episode on, in fact, the first episode was customer capers. But we can always do more on those subjects. Our episodes are, 25, 30 minutes long. Well, we can't, when we did the episode on values, there's no way we covered off values as a subject in half an hour.
Yeah.
So it's something we can always go back to and kind of go, well, actually, there's more we can do on that. And that's what... So there was a client who was a recruiter, and he wanted to do... And his episodes were like 15 minutes long, and he wanted to do an episode on retention. And it was like, okay, but you're not going to do it in 15 minutes. So you just... You pick an aspect of retention, and then you just kind of do your 15 minutes on that, and then do another 15 minutes on another aspect of retention. So it's realising that you can be as broad as you like, or as specific as you like with your content. Because, again, I mentioned before, there's no Ofcom with podcasting. So there's no rule to say how long your episodes need to be. So it's the freedom is with you, the content creator.
We do ours obviously monthly as well.
Yep.
And you were saying there about 6, and you've got like 6 months, 6 episodes. Is there a lot of benefit in doing it more than monthly, or is there a lot of disadvantage of doing it less than?
Again, from a business and brand point of view, I think monthly is kind of I wouldn't go any longer than a month. I think it's whatever works for you that is the right. So I've got a client at the moment, as it stands, where are we, middle of July 2023, they're doing 3 episodes a week.
Wow.
They're putting out. I've got other clients that are weekly, but they do them in sets of 10. I've got other clients who do every 3 weeks, which is really confusing, and so many of my scheduling and productivity things go, I don't understand how. So I have to I've had to kind of plot out where that goes manually rather than just letting it run automatically. It's just whatever works for you and your business and your commitment, really.
Why would they choose 3 weeks? Is that just...
Yeah, it seems like a funny number, doesn't
Yeah.
it?
It was just what they felt comfortable doing. What they did is, we didn't start publishing until they'd recorded everything. So they'd recorded a load of interviews, and they were like, right, this is the next series. I'll publish them every 3 weeks. Clearly, it went into their whatever marketing plan they'd created.
That's kind of once a month.
Yeah, that's
Until
the thing.
month 4.
And generally, it fell like that most times.
Yeah.
But every 4 months, there'd be 2 in a month. So it was just like, oh, this is just going to drive me insane.
So, Braidit app have sent in a question, and they have asked, what's your favourite podcast niche? Or niche to our American friends.
Indeed. I love a good true crime one.
Yeah.
But I do like kind of true ghost stories as well. I think that's one that that's kind of developing now. So this started with, and really for me in the UK, there's only one guy that's really cornered this market, and he's a BBC broadcaster called Danny Robbins, and he did one called the Battersea Poltergeist. And off the back of that, a load of people got in touch and went, "You think that's scary? Check out this thing that happened to me." So he started then to do a separate podcast called Uncanny, which was basically listeners' ghost stories. He's done another documentary one called Witch Farm, which was brilliant, and that was really good and quite spooky. He's done live shows. I think it's transferred to TV. They're going to be doing some uncanny TV shows. So yeah, I think, but only ever listen to them while I'm walking the dogs.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you listen to them at a certain time?
Never listen to them at night.
No.
Never listen to them when I'm on my own.
But I'd be expecting an axe in the back of my head if I was like walking about. I am so jumpy. I can't
that
listen
poltergeist
to
one, because you
I
suggested
did.
that one.
Yeah, that
I
was
sent
in
that out for you all to listen to.
Yeah, and I was like, I'm going to listen to it. And I listened to the first one. I was like, this is fascinating. And then I just like binged the whole lot. And then I couldn't go to the loo on my own for a month.
Was that because of the podcast or just generally?
Well,
Talking about retention.
I hope so.
So yeah, Ghost, and I love interview ones as well. I love just hearing people's, and I think the other one is probably, I'm a big fan of just finding new things. So there's three in particular. One is the guys from QI do a podcast called No Such Thing as a Fish, which is where they pick their favourite fact from the past 7 days. That's a weekly podcast and has been for years. And they talk about that. There's another one called 99% Invisible, which is about design in life. And it's called 99% Invisible because good design, we don't see it.
Yeah.
So like street design, city design and things like that is really good. And there's another one called Radio Lab, which is from out of public radio in New York. And again, every episode's just like a little mini documentary.
It's brilliant, isn't it? Because podcasts have brought out this real niche, haven't they? Of, we can talk about anything.
Yeah.
And there is going to be an audience somewhere.
Yeah.
As long as they find it.
I've said it's magazines for your ears. So
Yeah.
if you have a, if you have
Everyone's
any,
got a really weird picture in their head.
exactly, just holding up a magazine to your ear.
It's a Wedding Chat magazine.
Let's put that into AI and see what it
Exactly.
comes up with.
Yeah. So whatever your hobby is, whatever you like, whatever think at the very least there'll be a podcast episode about it.
Yeah.
And I've found that
Yeah.
there's some very niche things out there.
Brilliant. Brady App also asked a second question. They're really getting their geek on now
Well
because
done.
they're asking, what tools do you use to record the episodes?
So I'll talk you through what we do to record this. We have the Rode Podcaster Pro desk, which is really good. Before you get in touch, I've seen the Rode Podcaster Pro 2, and I don't think it's worth upgrading just yet. We use Rode Pod mics as our microphones. I use a MacBook Pro to take the feed from the Rodecaster, and I use Adobe Audition to split out the channels, and I use Adobe Audition to record on and to edit on. So,
Brilliant. So that's for the techie geeks.
yeah. Yeah.
I on the back of that, I have another question on the kind of editing side of it.
Yep.
So my question to you is, when you come to doing the editing of all the podcasts that you produce, how much of it do you actually cut out, or do you feel like it's good to keep them as
All of your
authentic
bits.
as possible? And
Yeah.
are the bits where you might think, oh, that's a blooper, I hope you airbrush that bit out, which I hope for on a monthly basis. Or is it better to leave it all in? Do people can they tell if something's been too finely polished, and is that necessarily not a good thing? And if we did rifle around on your cutting room floor, what might we find?
So generally, the way I edit, because it's not my podcast, so it's the client's podcast. So I do a thing, I edit for what's called flow and pace. So occasionally, obviously, if you're listening to this, you won't have heard this, but Claire will ask the four of us a question, or the three of us a question, and we'll be like, no idea. Don't know what to answer.
That happens a lot.
Yeah.
All the lines just go flat.
So I edit those gaps out, so it sounds like she goes, what do you think about this? And we go, well, I think this, almost immediately. Ums and ers are really different for different people. I'm quite an ummy and eerie person, so I tend to leave them in. There's one.
Yeah.
But the three of you aren't particularly. So if you say them, I tend to take them out because it's not a natural part of your speech pattern. If you take them out of someone who that's how you're used to hearing them speak, and you'll be like, what's wrong with them?
It doesn't sound like
they all sound weird, but
do all of the snorts stay in?
Quite a lot. Those, to be fair, the cutting room floor is littered with the snorts of Claire.
Ums and snorts.
There was a point where I kept a little folder of just snorts. And
Got 3 days worth of a
exactly.
podcast now.
When it just got full, I was like, oh, forget this. It's pointless. Just kind of all keep them all together.
We'll have to do an episode of just those bits.
Yeah,
stitched together.
Yeah. And it's lovely, because some clients are really good, or some clients, they literally just record what they need. So when the recording starts, they go, hi, welcome to this podcast, and they start speaking to the guest. But there was another client, and I told them about this. This was Abigail. Mm-hmm. And so she did a podcast about interior design. And she would be speaking to the guest for a good 25 minutes before the episode would start.
Oh, wow.
And I make a thing of, I listen to everything on the recording.
Yeah.
Because sometimes some clients will say, oh, we're going to talk about this, Pete. They'll talk to me as though I'm there. We're going to talk about this, Pete, and we can take that bit out, but we can keep that bit in. So I listen to everything. So generally, I was just listening to 25 minutes of Abby and whoever guest she had, just chatting.
Yeah.
Just, how was your week? Well, what's going on? Which was lovely. But, I don't keep any of that.
How do you fit all of that into your life? Like listening to them all? Do you have to, on WhatsApp,
That's
you can
what
speed it up? Like,
that's what I always wonder.
Can you
I didn't know you could do that on WhatsApp.
No,
by the way.
you
you
just
can speed it up.
Oh, that's
have
good.
to just go
It sounds
through
like a
it.
chicken.
That's part of the editing process for me, and that's why. So I allocate double the amount of time that the audio is. So if the audio is half an hour, it's gonna take me at least an hour to edit it, just because there's stopping and starting and going back and stopping and and what we'll do on the socials for A Funny Thing Called Business, the podcast, I'll make sure that we post a picture of what an episode of A Funny Thing Called Business looks like after I've edited it. So it's all different colours and every colour represents a time that we've had to make a cut or change the volume or add something in. But it's the bit I really like doing. It's the thing, and it's one of the things that we do for clients is, they want to do a podcast, but they don't want to have to pick through audio to edit it. Well, that's what we'll do because we enjoy doing that.
Yeah.
So.
It's really good conversation to have because I think it's this kind of stuff that leaves people in perfection paralysis. They're not doing something because, I've got too many ers and ums and I can't sound like that person. I can't sound as polished. And nobody does. Everybody's being edited or practiced, re-practiced. So
it is just, and I leave in the, I leave in the human bits if it fits with what the podcast is.
Yeah.
Why would you not? Because you want that connection with the listener, and the listener, you don't connect. There's a podcast out there that's AI generated, so it's a robot voice that's reading it, and you can tell it's an AI voice. You're never going to bond with that. You're never going to bond with that
God,
AI.
let's hope.
Can you put in a few ers and rs into the AI?
A few snorts.
A few snorts, yeah.
Yeah, you could, I suppose, but there's still an element to it. And maybe it's just my ear, but I'm listening to it thinking, I know this isn't human.
Oh, my God.
But, yeah.
So I've got one final question for you. Well, it's 2. How many times in a day do you think you say the word podcast? And the second is, how do you stand out from your podcasting crowd?
Okay, the first one, I say that word 42 times a day, and
Brilliant.
I've said it now.
Yeah. It is your full name, isn't it? Podcast Pete.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And so I can't actually say that word again today.
No, you
I've
don't.
I've said
Quota.
it for the 42nd time.
What are you going to replace it with?
I just won't say it again now.
Okay.
I'll just have to come
Sausages.
up with, audio file. I'll just have to call it something else. I think I may have told you about the local coffee shop. I ordered something from them, and I went in to get it, and I realised that they didn't know my name. And on the thing, they'd written Podcast Bob. And I was like...
Podcast Bob?
Yeah, they didn't know my name was Pete. All they knew was that I worked in podcasts. Podcast Bob. So forever my name with them is Podcast Bob. And how do I stand out? In my mind, the way I stand out is it's a bespoke service for every client. Every client is different, and I make sure that their journey into podcasting is fun. It's one that they enjoy. I try and make it as easy as possible. And we do everything. So there's other people out there that just do the editing or just do the production. We do the education, the music licensing. We help you get onto the biggest podcasting platforms out there. We do the editing, we do the production, we do the publishing as well, and getting you out onto Apple and YouTube and Spotify and Google Podcasts and and all the other Amazon Music that are moving into that field now, and the marketing of it. So it's a complete podcast service if that's what you want. So that's how I feel we kind of stand out, or try and stand out.
Brilliant. Any final questions?
Last question from me. What's your favourite ride at Walt Disney World?
Favourite ride would probably be... See, it's a tie because I love Rock and Roller Coaster, the Aerosmith one. But I think Rise of the Resistance.
Yeah, fair enough. That's fair. That's good. That's good.
Is unlike anything else.
Worth the wait.
Oh, it's incredible. What a ride that is. There we go.
I've got one final question for you as well, Pete.
Brilliant.
So after Darren's usability man in the last episode, what's your superhero name?
It's Podcast Bob, obviously.
It's got to be Podcast Bob. Yeah, I'll take that. Absolutely.
That seems as good a place as any to leave it. Thanks, Pete. You have shared lots of wisdom, knowledge, and some funny, so that was brilliant. And for our lovely listeners, please share, subscribe, and review so our fellow business owners can enjoy, be inspired, and always keep focused on the fun side of business too.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.